Well, good morning. Well, it's morning here. Not everywhere, I realize that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And so, let's see, we're going to catch up on the questions that we've missed last time. We didn't have time for. And let's see.
So Culadasa, I think the question we stopped on last time was the one before Federico's question. I sent you some email and said Federico's was the last one you answered, but I was mistaken.
Okay, so was the last one we answered was Katyayana's question? Okay, good. Yes, I think I recall. So we'll begin with Federico's. All right. So Federico asks, hello, Culadasa. What is your understanding of Rigpa in Dzogchen, if you are familiar with this term? Thank you. Well, nothing like getting right into the depths of things. I think, well, this is a fun question. And it's also one that that you can discuss almost infinitely, and people can get into disagreements about and things like this. But I'll tell you what my experience of it is. Now, for those of you that have read the 7th interlude of The Mind Illuminated, you'll notice that I really stress the point that what we call consciousness is a universal process of information exchange, that what we might call entities, that when they exchange information, that fundamental process is happening at every level, from the relationship of an electron and a proton in a hydrogen atom, or even the quarks that make up the subatomic particles, all the way up to something as complex as the human brain. Information is being exchanged. Actually, information is being created through interactions. And so even the exchange of information creates new information. Okay? So consciousness is a special case of this. And so for want of a better term, and actually going along with the translators from the Tibetan, but this very much fitting with the model that I've given you, can refer to awareness. Awareness refers very directly to the process of information that is created in every interaction that occurs in the whole of all that is, and that information is subject to being exchanged. Now, when I refer to entities, so we're going to use Greg Rosenberg's definition of an entity, or what he calls a natural individual. And that is whenever there is shared receptivity between different processes that are unfolding in time. that shared receptivity allows for information exchange. So an entity is created through the interactions of processes which have a capacity for shared receptivity. Does that make sense to you? So in a world that is accurately described by Paticca Samuppada, by causal interconnectedness and an even deeper level of interconnectedness than the causal, and by impermanence as continuous change and process. There is over and over again an interaction between between natural individuals, which form and dissipate and reform based on shared receptivity. Now, anytime there's an interaction between natural individuals, new information is created, and that information is subject to being exchanged. So Rigpa is referred to as, it's translated as the clear light of the mind, as a sort of universe, or sorry, the sort of awareness that permeates everything that is natural to it. And so do you see how the model of the mind that I described in the seventh interlude is pointing at this? So in the deep states of meditation, and Dzogchen and Mahamudra are both sort of intentionally geared to bring one to this place. There is a direct recognition of this, and one recognizes that what one experiences subjectively as awareness and consciousness is an aspect of the universe. That interesting thing about this is that some in modern physics, some people are beginning to use exactly the same sort of descriptive paradigm as has given rise to the term Rigpa and the experience of Rigpa in meditation, which is that, you know, matter as particles has given way to reality. The material universe is consisting of forces and fields, you know, and then to these actually involving the creation of waves in fields is what and fields of various kinds of force is what give rise to the appearance of particles, and etc., so on, up to the appearance of solidity, of materiality that we normally experience. But it's gone a bit further than that, with the recognition that all of these things that we know them by inference and analysis of information. And so it's being suggested more and more often that that's all there really is information. And this is a kind of a conjunction between some of the cutting edge modern physics and the idea of Rigpa, that Rigpa is this fundamental quality of reality, of ultimate reality, of suchness, of the ultimate Buddha nature and so forth, is that it consists in pure awareness. And that's what Rigpa is, the clear light of the mind. So Rigpa is a universal phenomenon. And our minds manifest that Rigpa as the clear light of the mind, that all, as one discovers in the progression through insight, there's a realization at some point that in the knowing is only the knowing. The knowing happens, just happens. It's independent of any knower or even of any known. That neither of those is anything more than a projection of the mind onto the fact of knowing in order to make it into the kind of information that we can use and do things with, and which, by the way, our brain has evolved to do that, because if we came into this world without our brains doing that and our minds having that experience of being an entity in a world of entities and so forth, we wouldn't be able to function very well. But in deep states of meditation, there is a direct experience of that, the realization that there is only the knowing, there is only this primordial awareness, or this clear light of mind, or this rigpa, and that is not just a phenomenon of the individual mind that comes to this realization, but that it is universal. So that is the explanation I would offer you. Like I said, it's a fun question. It's an even more fun experience.
Thank you very much for this very, very illuminating answer and the clear distinction. I mean, somehow shedding a light on the difference between personal and non-personal awareness, I guess, right? So between
Right.
awareness and consciousness.
Yeah.
This broader platform of universal awareness that is not necessarily individual.
Yes.
And the connection with physics. Thank you very much. It was very, very illuminating.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad you found that helpful. Yes. William Wallen, regarding your model describing ultimate reality, which includes, boy, that sounds like we're going to the same place again, are we? Which includes the properties of shared consciousness of thoughts, feelings, and memories, which have been interpreted as experiences of past lives. 2, reality, which can be viewed in 2 ways, as material objects or as intermingled, interconnected consciousness and other conditioned, interconnected processes without any things. 3, which is the unconditioned ground of all being, i.e. nirvana, and the expression of love in the universe. Could you please explain how your past training and experience in neuroscience and meditative experiences, reading the suttas and reading about the historical changes of the suttas and any other sources have led you to create this provisional model of ultimate reality? Please correct any summarization of the model which I have incorrectly stated. William, let me just make sure you're here with us. But if you're not, you'll get a chance to hear the recording. Yeah. Are you here?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay, great. All right. So now, so what I get from this is you're curious about how through all these different factors that this particular model of reality evolved. And the basic process that I would describe is that I started out as a seeker beginning when I was 15 years old, and I tried many, many paths to knowledge and wisdom. I, for many years, held to the hope that I would be able to eventually know and understand everything. And the two main routes, depending on what part of the English-speaking world you live in. You call them routes or routes. But anyway, two main routes that I followed. One was science. As a matter of fact, there was a period. One was science, and the other was religion, spirituality, philosophy. And so there was a point where my goal was to become a physical cosmologist. And at the same time, I had entered into a Catholic seminary. I was a seminarian for a period of time, with the foolish notion that what I would learn as a seminarian would include a profound investigation of things like John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, Cloud of Unknowing, so on and so forth, Christian mysticism. And to my great chagrin, I discovered that that it didn't include that at all. As a matter of fact, that was completely pushed aside. So I continued on a spiritual path through psychedelics to Vedanta, to transcendental meditation, and ultimately discovered Buddhism when I was in, let's see, it would have been 45, 55, yeah, my late 20s. And I knew I had arrived home. But the basic process that I underwent there, and I suppose this is something that I really owe to Buddhism, because, well, I remember the particular instance when the person that was teaching me about Buddhism, and I hadn't asked him to, he was actually helping me repair a broken sitar, but he was my first teacher. He was a Buddhist teacher. And so as we did this work, he would talk to me. And I found it very interesting, but because of the different things I'd already explored, it was sort of like, okay, I'll hear this out. But one day he said to me, and remember I was a graduate student at this point in science, trained in science, and he said, the Buddha said, don't take my word for any of this. Come and see for yourself, right? And I said, okay, this sounds like my kind of thing, and I started to get into it. And I learned a far superior form of meditation than what I had been doing with transcendental meditation, and prior to that, trying to learn to meditate using texts like Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. And those of you who are familiar with that will realize what you'll have a good laugh at the thought of a young man trying to learn how to meditate from that. But the basic theme is that with enough guidance to begin to practice, that I always gave primacy to the experiential. And what I experienced, I would sometimes recognize in science or in the traditional literature, something that seemed to be talking about the same thing. And I would draw from these sources sort of a synthesis when it came to the science of my personal experience and what neuroscience knew, which, through the course of my own personal spiritual evolution, just at that point in time, neuroscience was beginning to take off. We knew almost nothing about the way the brain worked at the time that I became a graduate student. And the kind of research we did was rather horrible. But I had all of the commentarial sources and the suttas, the Pali suttas to draw upon, and the Mahayana sutras. I'll mention here that my first teacher, Kemananda, and my second teacher, Jodhidhamma, were both students of Namgyal Rinpoche. Namgyal was originally a Theravadin monk whose name was Ananda Bodhi. He met the Karmapa in Sikkim, spent some time there, and was recognized as the Tulku, or reincarnation, of Namgyal Rinpoche. And so he reordained, and his teaching was he drew from not just every Buddhist spiritual tradition, but all spiritual traditions. And so this kind of was this was very formative to me in my approach. So my other source, other than science, was to go to this traditional literature and be able to, because of experiences I'd had in practice, be able to understand what they were saying, whereas before it was opaque. Best of all is that once I understood what they were saying, I could also understand what they were pointing to as to what I should do next in my practice. And quite surely through this process, there began to emerge deeper and deeper understanding that went beyond the more familiar and conventional description of insight and awakening. And admittedly, up until this present day, there has been relatively little and not tremendous clarity about these things. They haven't been written about nor discussed because most of the history of Buddhism has been monastic, and there was a weird interpretation of one part of the Vinaya where the Buddha said not to speak of spiritual attainments in order for some kind of personal benefit to be achieved. And this has been interpreted for up until this last few decades, has been interpreted within the monastic traditions that you never discuss these things at all except with your teacher. And that is a great tragedy. But anyway, the point is what the information that was available and is available contained the clues. And so it was in the process of that this understanding emerged. I can't understate the role of neuroscience in helping me to understand this, and I can't understate the role of the Pali Suttas. But in terms of these more what's the right adjective? Well, forget the adjective here. In terms of these understandings of that go beyond personal experience to a reflection of what we can know and understand about ultimate reality, I owe a lot of that to Mahayana sutras. I make great reference to the Lankavatara. I don't say much about it, but I got quite a bit out of the Heart Sutra. I don't mean the short Heart Sutra. I mean the much longer version of it. And well, all kinds of other sources. I would say I was amazed over and over again at what these masters of the past seem to have discovered through introspection that coincided with what science discovers through the external examination of things. So that's the underlying process by which my understanding developed, and out of that understanding, arose these models. And it's very important to acknowledge the fact that one of the most important things that I learned is that wisdom, true wisdom, is knowing that you don't know. And that was very disappointing to me because my goal was to know everything about everything. But it was really good to let go of that and to instead recognize that one can, I don't think in the course of a human lifetime, one ever reaches a point where there's not the capacity to go much deeper into understanding. In terms of the four-path model, the fourth path is called a path for a good reason. It's not the end of a process. It's really the beginning at a whole new level. And there's much beyond this. But to use a metaphorical illustration, if you imagine an infinitely large sheet and you represent that as everything there is that is potentially knowable, and then you make a little hole in that, or you draw a little circle on that and paint it white or something like that and say, okay, that represents what I know. Well, of course, the more you know, the larger the circumference of that circle. So the more you know you don't know. And until ultimately in all of this, you can come up with models which are the way, with the limitations of the human mind, you're able to describe through inference about ultimate reality certain properties that you can say with fair confidence that these may not be the ultimate truth, but they are true in as much as they represent the current capabilities of, let's just make it personal, of my mind and the extent of my knowledge from which to draw these inferences. So just to quickly go through your list, William, of shared consciousness of thoughts, feelings, and memories which have been interpreted as experiences of past lives. I have experienced those, and I have also experienced the fact that these certainly can't be a series of past lives beyond belonging to a particular self, like beads on a string, but rather that everyone who has ever existed, that the entirety of everything that they were still exists in what we perceive from our perspective as the past. And geologists and astrophysicists and CSI detectives all are working on the basis that the everything that has ever happened has left its mark, and if you know how to look and explore, you can trace things back to the Big Bang, that you can follow the evolution of both the land masses and seas and physical features of the earth developmentally back to when it was a cooling ball of iron. And the CSI detectives in their much more limited way can figure out who fired the gun and how and why and made something happen that is in their domain. So having had the experience of accessing these things and recognizing that what I accessed was not, in fact, me or mine, but something with which I had sufficient resonance that this became accessible to me. And I've also found over and over again when teaching, it's as though wiser minds from the past, sometimes I hear their expression of wisdom coming through my mouth, and I'm learning as much as anybody that is listening to me. And I could go on and on about the models that I have of how that happens. Reality can be viewed in two ways, as material objects or as intermingled, interconnecting consciousness and other interconnected processes without any things. Well, this is something that's become very obvious to me, in not just my meditative experiences, but in my daily life as the products of my meditative experiences have taken hold, and they have determined the nature of my understanding and my own perceptual processes. I'm a non-dualist in the sense that I don't believe there is any such thing as matter. There is no such thing as mind, but that there is this singular stuff out of which all things arise and return, and that when we are experiencing that from the inside, we experience it as mind. When we experience it from the outside, we experience it as matter. But ultimately, they are not separate. They are non-dual. The unconditioned ground of all being, I could go on and on about that, but I won't. We have to understand more clearly the term nirvana than traditional religious Buddhism has led us to make. It has reified nirvana into a sort of a thing and a singular sort of thing. And the word actually means the extinction of something. And the classic example, the way the word would have been used, is if you put out a candle, that was nirvana. You were extinguishing the flame. And in the metaphysics of those days, heat as an element, its proper dwelling was distributed throughout the universe, and it was actually held captive by the wick of the candle. And so that through the extinction of the flame, then the element of heat returned to its natural state, pervading the universe. And so what nirvana is pointing to is that kind of extinction. But the Buddha spoke of many different kinds of nirvana. What most people associate with nirvana is the cessation of all mental formations. But he also speaks of nirvana as the cessation of craving and suffering, and a number of other cessations. So this is the cessation of all mental formations is a state in which conscious experience ceases temporarily, because, as the Buddha said over and over again, consciousness arises with its object and passes away with its object. And therefore, there may be an experience that appears to be consciousness without an object, but the Buddha precluded that as being a reality. I have defined consciousness as information exchange, and there can be no exchange without the content. So it's basically saying the same thing. So the unconditioned ground of all being can be described as nirvana or emptiness or Buddha nature or there's all kinds of terms. My favorite is suchness, because it doesn't have these other meanings associated with it, which nirvana does, and emptiness does, and Buddha nature does, and so on and so forth. And that is how the Buddha described himself, as Tathagata, which means literally, the gata can mean either come or gone. It means either gone to suchness or come to suchness, and often more explicitly described as dwelling in suchness, and that's the interconnectedness, the ultimate reality, that is the ground of all things. And back to the fact of what we were calling Rigpa before, and talking about the universality of information exchange. And what is the result of that? Well, if you look at the history of the universe as we know it through science, there was a period where there was just nothing but pure radiant energy. And that radiant energy coalesced into the particles that ultimately made up atoms, and that ultimately make up molecules. And molecules make up progressively more and more complex structures, all the way up to and including ourselves and other very complex living organisms. And so when you think about it in that way, what is the result of all of this information exchange? It results in the dance between an electron and a proton and a hydrogen atom. And it goes all the way up to the evolution of a species that, like, we are the most communal species that has ever existed. We care for each other. Love has a very profound meaning in human terms, and we express it in many ways. To what would seem illogically, we care for the ill and the weak and the elderly at our own, at the expense of the young and the healthy. This is an expression of love. When I look at the trajectory of the universe, and I understand it from the point of view of this sort of interactionness, I guess is the word I'm trying for. I see that the coalescence of energy into particles and the union of particles into atoms resembles much, what we call love in human behavior. And I begin to understand love, and as well as consciousness and awareness, as being the familiar expressions of something that is a universal phenomenon. Considering that the entire history of the universe has trended very, very consistently in a particular direction, I have no reason to believe it's going to do anything but continue to develop in that direction. And I see that from our human point of view, we could describe that direction as increasing love. So I don't know, hopefully you get my point. Enough said. That help, William?
Yes, I guess I was actually thinking specifically probably more about the idea of the lack of reincarnation and or that interpretation,
Mm-hmm.
and what the source of that arose from?
Well, that arose from repeatedly realizing over and over again in many ways that there was nothing there that could be reincarnated, but
Right.
also realizing that just as with in the realm of matter, nothing ever ceases to exist. With the dissolution of the body, the material that makes up the body sooner or later ends up becoming parts of other bodies. There are all these natural cycles that occur in the biosphere. And from especially from a non-dualist point of view, whatever you see in matter must have its counterpart in mind. But the same thing with mind. Why should everything that is in a mind somehow cease to exist because the body has dissolved, and things like past experience of past lives and feeling as though that I am somehow channeling beings that are probably not, I mean, I don't know, but they're probably in the past. These are all things that are saying that this is all continuing to happen and to unfold. So I would say, well, first of all, is the Buddha clearly pointed out that there was nothing that you could identify as self. And even those who choose to translate anatta as not self rather than no self, if no matter where you look, you have to say of what you find, no, not self, then that means no self. You can leave the not out. He pointed to no self. He used the term rebirth to refer to the rebirth of the self as a construct of the mind. And your self, a person's self, gets reborn over and over and over again. And in each new being that's born, the self is born, but this is not a particular self. This is just that illusion of self is constantly being reborn. And the self of one individual is identical to the self of another in that it is an illusion that has exactly the same properties. So what then might happen to the mental aspect of a being after the passing of the body? Well, I can see that the qualities, let's call them the qualities of ignorance and the qualities of wisdom, continue to exist as a part of the wholeness of everything. So in essence, every time somebody becomes awakened, then the pool of awakenedness in the totality of things is increased. And likewise, when somebody has aspects of ignorance, particularly those things such as cruelty and selfishness and things like that, that's a pool that can be added to or withdrawn from. There are Tibetan practices of taking into yourself feelings like hatred and anger and transmuting them into loving kindness and compassion. And I believe that that's something that we do in our own personal spiritual evolution as we take our tendencies to anger, so forth, and transmute them into love and understanding, that we're affecting the whole. So a new being comes into existence, and that mind, that brain that's genetically determined, gives rise to a mind that resonates with various qualities, and those qualities then become part of that mind. And as a person develops in the course of their lifetime, it's not something that happens once at the beginning, but during the course of our lifetime, as we develop spiritually, there's a kind of resonance that allows us to tap into this pool of wisdom and pool of love and pool of understanding, and to at the same time bring about a transformation in the totality of that through whatever they do with it. So that is what, in the sense of reincarnation, which is totally unsupported by all of the Buddha's true teachings. Yes, there's suttas where he's talking about something else and people believe in reincarnation, and he doesn't want to lose track of the whole point he's trying to make by entering into some kind of disputation. So he just accepts, okay, and he even uses examples from belief in reincarnation to reinforce other points he's trying to make. But it's clear from the teaching itself that there's no place in there for this idea of some kind of self. Call it a, I mean, people are desperate to find something that's a self. They try consciousness, a really popular one, and there's a wonderful sutta in which Buddha just blows that apart totally with Sati, the fisherman's son, who is teaching that what gets reincarnated, gets reborn is consciousness. Then there's the attempt by some schools to make the mind stream into some sort of separate, discrete entity that can be reincarnated. Leave all of those aside, and what you have is the all of those things that could be subsumed in one way or another under the rubrics of wisdom and ignorance. Those continue. Those are reincarnated, so to speak. But it's not a person that's being reincarnated. It is those mental faculties. And they don't necessarily enter into just one mind. There are those that have affinities with each other. The same person may carry within them wisdom and ignorance, both. And the components of wisdom will tend to hold together and perhaps might enter into one being. The components of ignorance might enter into another being, or a variety of beings. So it's much more like the transmission of genetic information. From one set of parents, the same genetic information can be transmitted to a dozen children, right? So, yeah.
I've found your model to be quite intellectually compelling, to be sort of very satisfying in terms of the combining of all those elements. I was just curious about the source. Thank you for this really great review.
Yeah, you're welcome. At this rate, we're going to have another 5 review sessions here. But I try to, well, it is what it is. I'll do my best not to be, so long-winded, and wanted to include the whole of the Dharma and answer to every question. Fabian says, for the past couple of years, I've been dealing with nihilistic perspectives. There are times when I feel deeply depressed and start worrying about taking my own life because of the toll these perspectives have on me. I've sought therapy, which has led me to you and your teachings, and so I'm seeking guidance from you on how to deal with these feelings of meaninglessness. I don't know how dense the answer to this question may be, so I'll be appreciative of any resources, practices, teachings from others you have to offer, as well as your own. Well, Fabian, I feel deeply for you, and I hope that I can give you some thoughts and ideas that you might find helpful. If you look at what I've been talking about in this session, that really what you imagine as yourself is merely an expression of some much greater wholeness, of that is also a great and wonderful mystery. And the best way out of the nihilism that you are feeling and the depression that you are feeling is to take yourself out of the self, because both the nihilism and the depression, they're closely related. But if you think about it, they are very self-centered. They involve your mind drawing conclusions such as things should not be the way they are. They're terrible. They're meaningless. There's just all this meaningless pain and suffering. My life has no meaning. That, all I've done is I've suffered, I've tried. Sometimes I've succeeded, sometimes I've failed, but it just seems like it's just, it's ultimately pointless and meaningless. And this, out of this arises nihilism. You extend this, you look around, you say, yeah, everything that everybody's doing is equally pointless. None of this has any meaning. And what I would encourage you to do, I think what will have more powerful effect than anything else, is get out of yourself. Do everything you can to be of service to others. Don't question why there is the pain and suffering in the world that there is, but rather do what you can to reduce that. Don't wonder why there isn't more joy and happiness in the world than there is, but rather do what you can to create joy and happiness. Put your focus on the well-being of others, of any kind. If your nihilism brings you to the point, at this point in time, that you find it difficult to express your loving kindness and compassion towards human beings, and that's understandable. We're pretty obnoxious creatures. Then turn it towards nature. Turn it towards the animals, the organisms, the plants, the oceans, the planet itself, the beauty of which is a little bit unmistakable. And think of it as beauty doesn't need a purpose. Beauty just is. Support that. Get out of yourself and do what you can for the world. The meaning of life is the meaning that you, I could say the meaning you create for yourself, but I'd rather say it's the meaning that you discover that's already there waiting for you to discover it. So rather than sinking into nihilism and sinking into depression and into that craving for escape and the void that you somehow imagine that taking your life would lead to, drop that. Leave all of that behind. Turn outward. Turn outward with love, appreciation. Do something to make things better. Not for you. Discover your own meaning in things through love and compassion. And Fabian, I sincerely hope that little bit of advice helps. I know in my experience that is the most powerful thing that you can do, which doesn't preclude the therapy that you seek or anything else. But yeah, as if Fabian's here, I hope that this has been of use and strikes home in some way. And if you're not, I certainly hope you listen to the recording, because I honestly believe that you'll find what I'm saying to be of enormous value. Okay, next we have John Selwyn. Let's just check, see if John is here. Hey, John is here. Great. Okay. When I focus on the breath with the nostrils and the sensations are very faint, sometimes I seem only to be able to detect some during 1/3 of the exhale. Also, my inhale is very short and my exhale very long, and I don't feel much of it. I have many years of meditation experience, but I'm new to this method of focusing on the breath with the nose. Will I develop more sensitivity and be able to feel more with practice, or am I a case of someone who should focus on the movements of the abdomen instead, as I've heard you say in a talk on YouTube? Well, the fact that you are able to detect the sensations for part of the breath is very promising. If you find that, I'm not sure what stages in the practice you are, but if you find that following the movements, I would say follow the sensations of the abdomen. I really stress the sensations of the breath at the nose, and I'll stress the sensations of the breath at the abdomen, because we want to focus as much as possible in this practice at all times on what is actually appearing in consciousness, rather than what are the elaborations our mind can make from it. And movement is an elaboration of a sensation. With your eyes closed, you have a sensation that your mind interprets as movement. But nevertheless, it's a sensation prior to becoming an interpretation of movement. So there's nothing wrong at all with using the movements at the abdomen, or the sensations of movement at the abdomen. At some point, you may find it much easier to detect sensations at the nostrils. When you get to stages 5 and 6, you'll be using the body scanning method. And an important part of that method there is, in both stages, is that you do the body scan for a while, and then you go back to the nose and see if you can sustain that clarity and that powerful perception. Are you, in the case of stage 6, if you go back to the breath and sustain that exclusive attention that you've had while doing the body scan. So I think you might very well discover that starting out using the abdomen, developing the basic skills in that allow you to use these faculties of attention and awareness to their greatest extent, that there will come a point where you can probably use the breath at the nose and take advantage of the particular advantages that it provides for some of the later practices. Okay? Nothing wrong with using the breath at the abdomen, and I suspect that you'll find, actually, you know, we go through life. One of the things that a normal person just filters out and is almost never aware of, except under certain circumstances, is the sensations of breath at the nose. They're more likely to be aware that they're breathing heavily or they're breathing faintly or something like that, which is at a totally conceptual level. And they're in the we all tend to be in the lifetime practice of ignoring the sensations and living in the realm of our conceptual interpretation of those sensations. So as a meditation object, this is going back a step to something more fundamental. So being in the habit of not paying any attention to those sensations, I think might explain why you find it hard. I found some people that, just as I was suggesting might be in your case, they find that using the abdomen is better. That point comes when they can just as easily experience the sensations of the breath in their nose and also in their hands and feet and legs and arms and top of their head as well. Hope that helps. Do you think it will?
Yes, I think it will. Thank you.
Okay. Gianluca, in the previous months, I've had many insights and I've experienced in retire the possibility of not creating mental suffering, even in the face of very strong emotions like loss and fear. Now I feel that something in me is shifting. In many situations that previously triggered desire and aversion, I feel that my mind doesn't react and it is in sort of a stasis. It seems like that the submind doesn't know how to respond. And when I respond in the old habitual way, aversion or desire, I dislike the sensation and corresponding mind state. But in the same way, it appears that there is no response and is a very strange phenomenon, and I'm not very comfortable with it. I wonder how the process will continue to change me and how it will impact my life. Well, we could have a much longer conversation where I ask you questions about how this developed. But what you are having a firsthand experience of is the way that so much of our suffering is mind created. As a matter of fact, the Buddha makes a distinction between dukkha of physical origin and dukkha of mental origin. And I use the word pain to describe the first and suffering to describe the second, just to help clarify the distinction. And then say that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And that, as was pointed out by the Buddha in his simile of the second arrow, physical pain is being struck with an arrow. And then the mind's reaction, the suffering it generates in response, is like being shot with a second arrow. And to realize that firsthand, and especially to be able not to shoot yourself with a second arrow when you experience physical pain, is a wonderful discovery. And it's a large step towards realizing that so much of our suffering has nothing to do with anything physical at all. It is the emotions like loss and fear, which you mentioned, and so many others, that the mind reacts to through resistance. When we say that craving causes suffering, let's look at what we mean by craving. It's ultimately, craving is wanting things to be different than how they are. Desire for something you don't have, or desire to hold on to something that you do have, we both know in reality the latter is impossible. So the suffering that's associated with desire is wanting things to be different than they are, wanting to have something you don't, wanting what you do have not to ever pass away. The same thing with aversion. It is much more obviously so that it is wanting things to be different than they are. If you're in the presence of something or someone you dislike, you want things to be different than they are. If you're experiencing pain or have loss or fear or something like that, you want things to be different than they are. Craving can be thought of as resistance to what is. And as somebody once said, to resist what is insanity. Now, to do something about it is just real common sense, but to resist the fact of it is the kind of insanity that that manifests as craving and that leads to suffering. So it's wonderful that you're having this direct experience of this. Whether this is the result of having achieved insight and perhaps even having achieved some degree of awakening, I couldn't tell without a much, much longer conversation, or whether it's something that's been brought about in a different way. It is demonstrating to you, it is teaching you, it's profound teaching if you look into it, that will lead to, if it's not already the case that you have some degree of insight and awakening, this is an opportunity which, if you investigate, can lead to the kind of insight and awakening that provides the level of understanding that I sense from your question is not quite well developed yet. So, but yeah, in any way, congratulations on your experience, Gianluca. I am happy to hear that you're experiencing this, and I wish you the best. Please practice meditation, and if you aren't already, keep on practicing, and it will take you where you want to go. Okay. I'm wondering if you're here and would like to give me any response to that. Looks like you're not here. Well, okay. Alexander Morisov. Hi, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 1 hour until the event. Please don't forget. Okay. Well, that happened. Okay, it looks like we have finished all of these questions in what is for me a remarkably short period of time. So, since I have a few minutes left, if anybody would like to give me any feedback or go into anything in any more depth, please. I'm willing to spend a little bit of time doing that in dialogue here.
Culadasa, if you want, there are actually some questions from the previous Q&A that we could go through.
Okay, that
I
sounds
have a
great.
question too, if you also have a moment.
Okay, well, why don't we take your question first, and then I'll look at these previous questions.
This is Katyayana here. Thank you so much again. And I just wanted to, after Thanksgiving, we had a beautiful gratitude meditation yesterday. And it was brought up to think of gratitude as the 11th parameter. Could you, just in the same way you talked about love and, it's the most powerful force within the universe for healing. Could you talk about gratitude as well, just a little bit?
Yes. Gratitude.
Thank you.
Yes, gratitude is it's wonderfully powerful, and that is something that I think is unique to beings with minds that are capable of a degree of understanding and appreciation to give rise to gratitude. So that's one of those things that we benefit so very, very much by developing. We had a Thanksgiving dinner here last night, and I was asked to do a blessing before the dinner, and what I chose to use is something that's called the Mandala Prayer, which, if you get into the details of which, creates an attitude of gratitude and loving kindness. And it goes like this. Here is the great earth. filled with the smell of incense, covered with a blanket of flowers. Now we can extend the poetic imagery here, that here is this wonderful world we live in. And it's not just the smell of incense and a blanket of flowers, but it is all of the wonderful experiences that present themselves to our senses. You know, the smell of the pine forest and the desert after rain, and the sounds of birds singing, and the beauty of the sky as a storm is either building or passing away. And it goes on and on. And to be in gratitude for this great earth, and what beauty, what wonder it offers us. And the prayer continues, the great mountain, the 4 continents. Now, this is in reference to Mount Meru, which used to be thought of as the center of the universe, and they only knew of 4 continents, beside the point. The great mountain, the 4 continents. This planet has such incredible variety. Seashores of many different kinds, plains, deserts, mountains, once again, of many different kinds, jungles, northern forests. There's just such a variety in this world. You know, once again, we are so blessed that we exist in a realm which is so beautiful. Yes, there are problems. Yes. But that shouldn't stand in the way of the tremendous gratitude that we're capable of having and appreciating the wonder of this world that we're a part of. And it continues on. Wearing a jewel of the sun and the moon. So this is just carrying us one step further, that it's not just this planet. It's the poetry of the prayer only mentions the sun and the moon. And perhaps at the time that it was written, the stars were just too mysterious and things like that. But we know now, and we can appreciate that this goes way beyond the world that we see around us today, or even this whole planet. That this is a universe of just incredibly wondrous and phenomena, the beauty of which is just beyond comprehension. And then we finish up with saying, in my mind, I make of this a paradise of the Buddha, and I offer it to you all, sentient beings everywhere. By this deed, may all beings come to know the pure world, free of suffering. So now this is where we're going. We free ourselves from suffering, and it allows us to be in this state of gratitude and appreciation. But to the degree to which we can experience and manifest that gratitude and appreciation, no matter where we are on our spiritual path, and even if we're not intentionally on a spiritual path, to experience that kind of gratitude and appreciation is a deeply spiritual act. To see beyond, it's so easy for us to dwell on what's wrong, but to see beyond that to the incredible wonder of what is, and to hold the wish that all beings may be free from suffering and all beings may be able to experience this wonderful world. So you might find that to be a nice thing to practice in your own life. Although, knowing you, Katyayana, I think that you're probably already in that place. So,
Well, thank you so much. It's so beautiful what you just said. Also, while you were talking, it came to me that in a way, gratitude is also very much an acceptance of the suchness of things. And in that acceptance, you also develop that gratitude. It's a symbiotic, synergistic relationship, which is so lovely. In
Yes.
that one feeds on the other, and in that suchness, and then that
Right.
gratitude. So thank you so much. It's so nice to see you, and have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you. The same to you. Now, let me look and see if we got some older questions here that I.
So I just actually went through the questions, and the only two questions that are left are a question that Andrea asked and a question that I asked, which I think you've actually answered because we asked you at another time. So
Oh, okay.
we don't really need to do those if you want to call this a success. I think we've succeeded admirably here.
Yeah, that works for me. We can all get on with our other things. So we're actually caught up. It's wonderful. So hope to see all of you next week, and we do a November Q&A with all kinds of new questions. Okay.
All right.
So, all right. Best wishes to all of you.
Thanks, Culadasa.
Thank you. Thank you
Culadasa.
so much.
Yeah.